Welcome along, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. It's nice to see you. Today's topic is all about image generation. We see this as a really kind of underutilized feature. So we wanted just to share some of our use cases and best practices, as well as some of kind of different approaches that can help you be a bit more successful with image generation. So yeah, thank you for coming along. If you've not met us before, we are wordpower. We spend all our days working with businesses on AI enablement, and then each month we do one free session called the Power Up. My name is Daph. I'm co-founder. I'm here along with Tom. Give us a wave, Tom. Thank you. And yeah, as today's topic is all about image generation, I made some avatars all about kind of bringing our ideas to life, hence the sketch on screen. And before we got started, I wanted to share a little bit of like inside baseball, super quick tip for you. Anytime you're ideating or exploring different effects or layouts, a good technique is to kind of create multiple styles all at once in a reference grid. Here I asked for like a 3x3. You can see it's all been numbered 1 to 9. ChatGPT made this for me. I can then select my favorite and work on that rather than kind of going through on a linear basis, prompting different styles, etc. You can do a lot with a reference grid. And then I normally pick whichever one I look the most handsome and Tom looks kind of dorky and go from there. So that was just a super quick tip before we even start. Shout out to our sponsors today, our friends at School of Social. They provide excellent training and strategy around all things social. So if social is something you're trying to crack, definitely get in touch with them. Thank you, guys. And yeah, that's us. But as Tom mentioned at the top, you're definitely involved too. Would love to make this a conversation. Would love to hear some of your tips and ideas. You can use the microphone. You can use the chat. That's all great. And yeah, get ready to be hands-on. We'll be doing some demos. So do pull up your AI tool of choice and you can play along as you like. But let's get into it. Let's talk AI image generation. Tom, probably the first place to start is what platforms should we be using for this?
Yeah, for sure. So lots of different tools that you can use to generate images with AI. We're going to focus today primarily on ChatGPT and Gemini as our two favorites, but you can really follow along with our exercises using any tool that you like that does image generation. ChatGPT this year updated their image gen model to image gen 2. It's kind of considered the best in class right now in terms of photorealism and maybe more importantly, instruction following. As you'll see when we do our exercises, there's lots of little nuances to the different use cases you might bring to life. So the model adhering to what you're telling it is really important in a business context. Whereas in a creative context, you really just want kind of the coolest, maybe most impressive looking images. So there are some platforms like that. If you've heard of Midjourney, it's been around for a couple of years, kind of state of the art in terms of sheen and like appearance, but not that good at doing exactly what you want it to. So you don't see a lot of business users using that. So again, ChatGPT and Gemini both are two kind of favorites in terms of the quality of images that they produce. We thought Claude was worth an honorable mention. Claude is a really powerful, has a really powerful design platform built into it and kind of native to the Claude experience. So a couple of our use cases today, a little more design oriented. We'll do some infographics, some icons. Claude can actually be really powerful for that as well. So not a true image gen platform, but really good for the sort of work you might be doing in a business context. You'll also, if you work with any designers, you'll hear of some designer-oriented tools like the Adobe suite has Adobe's own image generation models built into it. You can also use other third-party image generation models within Adobe. So Adobe is a really good one for the kind of hardcore design folks. But if you're new to this, we suggest just starting with ChatGPT. Even the free tier in ChatGPT, it has a decent amount of image generation that you can take advantage of and be using that best-in-class model.
Yeah, our recommendation is always the best tool to be using is the one you have access available to you already. And yeah, these AI tools are like Swiss Army knives. They're can do a lot and their image generation is surprisingly fantastic. Is anyone here using anything, bespoke, any particular design tools for AI image generation? Or are you using one of these three?
Gemini. I've been using a lot of Gemini these days.
Cool. And what are you using it for? What's your main kind of use case?
Embarrassingly, birthday cards and text chains. So I just like, it was one of my best friend's birthdays and she shares a birthday with Shawn Mendes. So I made a little Shawn Mendes, Sarah Butler birthday celebration image. Please.
I like it. That's solid. And it came out well.
It did, yeah.
Cool. Thank you. Thanks for sharing. Hannah, how about you? How about yourself?
So yeah, I have my own consultancy, and when I work with clients, sometimes they have a brand guide, sometimes they don't. Something I used Nano Banana in Google for was creating kind of like their brand. So it's like really illustration kind of opportunities and images. So I decided to create 5 images, and luckily I come from a design background, so I could kind of get to what I thought was good and check that was okay with the client. And then I used those 5 within my prompts as the guidelines for creating many more images, and I actually ended up nearly 100 illustrations that the Gemini knew my boundaries, my color palettes, and everything. So yeah, it really worked out well.
Awesome. That's a great share. That's a great use case. Thank you. Thank you very much. Cool. And Tom, you was mentioning Grok is improved here as well.
Yeah, they're definitely worth a mention. They actually just updated their Imagine model within the last couple of weeks. And so it actually just, I believe, released a new update. Very photorealistic as well, meant to be expressive, creative. If you've used Grok before, they pitch that'll kind of do whatever you tell it to do. So kind of the least guardrails of any image model. So definitely worth a consideration. To your point about using the tools you're using on a day-to-day basis, we work with businesses that are rolling out ChatGPT, Gemini Enterprise, Claude Enterprise regularly, right? So if you can get mileage out of one of those, go for it. But Grok is certainly, from a tech standpoint, they certainly have some cool tools here. Yep.
Cool. Okay, thank you. Yeah, before we go on to talk about like when you should be using AI and when you could be using it, it's definitely worth a quick pause and thinking when you shouldn't be using it, because we do see a lot of people get this wrong. Like 3 important times not to be using it. One is when you don't have time to be really thoughtful about it. We see a lot of AI slop out there, across LinkedIn, across Facebook, especially people just putting out generic horrible material, and it doesn't land very well with the audience at all. People have a negative reaction to it. So maybe only using AI when you actually have time to properly design it and refine it rather than slop. Secondly, I think this is fairly obvious. Don't be deceptive. Don't be claiming the image is 100% real when it's actually not. Be conscious of the audience and how they might perceive that. We don't want to be doing any lying or deception. And thirdly, anytime there's complexity involved, or the stakes are really high, or it's going to get an awful lot of eyeballs, you should be using an expert, a designer at that stage, and maybe they will use some of this technology and maybe they won't, but we definitely use designers a lot, and we're not trying to replace that. It's incredible skill and incredibly important. And before we dive into some use cases, Tom, can you talk us through some kind of universal best practices that are always true?
Yeah, so prompting for image generation is a little different than traditional AI prompting and AI conversations. I mean, the conversations are a lot smaller, and to some extent, it's like you're summoning the gods or something. Like, especially with early image generation models, there's this idea that like every time you make an ask, you get something back totally different, right? So there's like some luck and some art involved. The latest models, particularly OpenAI's last round of models, have really doubled down on instruction following. And so there are some guidelines that you can think about when you are prompting to get away from the voodoo and make it a little bit more of a science. So 5 that we wanted to hit on. The first is writing full sentences, being clear and acting like an art director more than someone who's writing a prescription. So kind of like focusing on the most clear and important items that you need brought to life in the image, and maybe avoiding some detailed specs. In our testing, things like 2K versus 4K in the prompt or 64 pixels a lot of times get ignored, but telling it kind of these big ticket items that you need included will often get faithfully followed. So focus on the big picture stuff, talk to it like an art director. The second one, put any unimage copy in quotes. So in a business context, it's very common that your image should include some kind of text. Maybe there's a product that you're including. Maybe you're making marketing materials that have text. Anytime you want text included, just spell that out word for word, and it'll get adhered to more faithfully in your image that you're creating. A third one, when you're supplying multiple reference images. So Cara gave the example of Shawn Mendes and another person and putting them in the same picture, super fun one. That anytime you're doing that, you got to be really clear with the AI on which image is which. The kind of formal guidelines that OpenAI shares that we find really work are just spelling out, giving you two images. Image one is the product, image two is the scene, so on and so forth. So you see that in our examples. Two more quick ones. Iterating is now a lot more possible than it was in the past. So again, early image generation, you kind of ask for something and you get it. But now you can come back and say, hey, I like that, but I want to see a slight change. And so the guidelines for prompting around that are to be clear about what to keep as you continue to turn and have a conversation. The AI doesn't always bring every single detail along with it. In image generation, things tend to get forgotten. So reminding the tool what your key subjects are that you need included is best practice. And then lastly, things might look nice in the small preview window that you're getting in your chat tool, but then when you go to use your image, you might find additional nuances, details that weren't taken into account. One common one is asking for a transparent background. Your preview shows up and it looks like it has a transparent background. You go to use an image or an icon you made, it does not have a transparent background. So just make sure you vet your images, get the zoom button out a little bit, and make sure you're getting the weeds on what you get.
Thanks for sharing those best practices, Tom. Okay, super. Time to get hands on. So if you haven't already, feel free to download the prompts that we're going to be using today. We're going to be going fairly quickly, so you probably won't get time to generate all the images that we do today, but you can follow along in your own time afterwards. And the scenario that we're going to be playing with today is all around this product launch. We're going to be exploring some use cases around it, but the use cases are kind of applicable to kind of any situation. And this is the Buddy coffee maker, and it looks very slick indeed. And 4 approaches we're going to cover. We're going to talk about how to describe an image in detail to get the exact output that you wanted. We're going to talk through kind of combining multiple images into one. We're going to talk through using a sketch to create new content, and then matching a specific style using reference images. So Tom, if you're good to demo.
I sure am. Let's do it. So I'll kick us off with use case 1, and this is maybe the most straightforward or a lot of people's starting point. This is true text to image. I'm going to provide a text description of something I want, and the AI is going to create that image totally from scratch. Like Daph mentioned, we're launching a new portable espresso maker, the Buddy, and as part of our work, we're going to create a product image that we can share with retailers. So let's start by creating a nice background that we can use for our product image, and then for step 2, we'll drop our image in there and create our retail ready little promo card. So I'll walk you through the prompt that we use. Because image generation can take a little bit of time, I actually ran these earlier and kind of preloaded them, but I encourage you to run these live if you're following along. So I'll walk you through this prompt now. Create a photorealistic photograph of a campaign of a campsite picnic table at dawn. So I'm basically describing here kind of the core things that I want first and foremost. This is essentially the subject of my image. I'm then describing some detail around it. So some of the lighting, we find in our testing that image generation tools are exceptional at following lighting guidelines. So you can pick directions, you can call shadows, things like that, color palettes. We then chose an orientation for the camera. So choose it from a standing eye level, looking down at the surface. And then we give it a little bit of context. And this is kind of optional. You might find you can get your results without context, but as a general best practice, we like to guide the tool on the work that we're doing just as a North Star. So we said, this is editorial lifestyle photography. We're going to use it as a backdrop. The last thing we dropped is the aspect ratio. If you remember, one of our best practices, we said, focus on the big picture items because some details get missed. One thing that does usually get faithfully followed is the aspect ratio. So if you ask for the image in a common aspect ratio, you can get that back. If you're asking for a weird aspect ratio, you're not getting that back. You can just ask your tool what aspect ratios it supports, and it will tell you right there in the reply.
I think the real aha moment for me here was just the level of detail to provide. And because, yeah, I would often give it a small amount of detail and get something back which I was unhappy with. Someone described this to me as like to pretend you're describing a scene in detail to someone over the phone, and that really helped me.
Really well said. And if you had asked a shorter prompt, you might have gotten something like this. But this is a matter of taking control, reducing the turns back and forth, and really getting that output that you want faster. Okay, so this is good. I'm in ChatGPT work, by the way, which allows me to pop this up and zoom into it. So I'm going to zoom into this closely and inspect it. I'm going to see if there's any nuances or details that I don't like. And because AI makes mistakes, you might find something odd. You might find a stool leg that's not supposed to be there. You might find grains in the wood that look unusual. After inspecting this one, I was quite happy with it, but I had a little stroke of creative inspiration. I thought, what if we had some fog coming off that lake? So I dropped one more prompt in here: keep the table surface, the lighting direction, everything exactly as they are, but add a low morning mist over the lake. So I got back this image now that has this neat little subtle morning mist coming over the lake. The prompt here, again, I probably could have just said add a low morning mist over the lake, but we want to iterate this best practice or pin this best practice down with you all, that as you keep riffing on an idea, pointing out the key subject items that are most important is just a good best practice to avoid drift. So that's why we did that here. Okay, cool. So task one done. I have the background for my product image set up. I'm now going to start a fresh chat, or hop over to a fresh chat and actually drop the espresso press into the scene. So here I'm supplying two different images, and as we explain in the best practices, we're going to detail out very clearly what the point of each image is. So the image I dropped in here that's spinning is my espresso press. And then since I'm using ChatGPT work actually saves these files as I'm working on them over here in this side pane. So I actually can tell it to use the image we made in the last conversation in this conversation. So as you're working through an exercise like this, where you're creating a bundle of assets or several different pieces of imagery, using a platform like this where storing it in the combo can be super powerful. All right, so a little more detail on that prompt. So image one is the product, image two is the scene. Place the espresso press, which we said was image one, into the clear area of the table in image two. And keep the product exactly as it appears in image one. And then we reiterate again some of these key details that are really important to stay persistent. We talk about the angle of the pull handle, the knurled portafilter handle. Knurled is a real word about metal finish that we want to stay intact, right? So again, reiterating these key things and then suggesting what changes we need.
And Tom, is there a limit on the number of kind of reference images that you can provide?
There is. I don't remember it offhand, but at some point you do reach a limit. Yeah, if you try to supply 20 reference images, you will not get a good result. But you can do more than two for sure.
Yeah, I think the latest models, yeah, somewhere in the tens.
Great. Yeah, that would be a pretty complex image, but yeah, give it a shot. Okay, here. So now I drop the buddy directly into my image, and again, I'm going to inspect this and zoom in and make sure I'm happy with this. I'm looking for details like the text. I see it says buddy here, kept that. The etching looks right. The position for how it's making contact with the table, the shadow that it's casting. Remember, our light source was coming from that left corner, so the shadow is appropriate. So this last step of evaluating your results and deciding if you need to try again, really, really important. You'd hate to get late stage where you're using this for important things and then discover these artifacts or these missteps later down the road.
Cool.
So that's our photo. Yeah, that's our photorealistic stuff. Jeff, why don't we show them how we do some imagery and icons?
Yeah. So taking what Tom has already created, the next approach is about providing more information to the AI via a sketch or a quick diagram. So in this instance, we wanted to create a process diagram which explained how your coffee is brewed. But this is super useful for any time you want to convey a large amount of information, especially some visuals and some layout information. So infographics, diagrams, new layouts for slides, anything like that. So I quickly drew this. This wasn't one of my kids before you say anything. I gave it some clear instructions about what it should do with this. So I described what I'd given it and then what I want to happen. So each panel should hold a simple line illustration, what each of the illustrations should do, what the text should be, what the hex code of the colors is, etc. Make the image 3x2. And because it's a co-work, it's spun out two really good examples. Super pleased with how this one looks. So definitely recommend that approach. And then a fourth approach that we use quite often that I just wanted to touch on is using reference guides for kind of style as well. So Hannah, you mentioned this earlier, but in this example, I'm wanting to create a set of icons. This is very common for us. We're always creating presentations in different styles, client styles, for example, and we want a set of icons. And so here I've described the kind of icons I want by uploading a reference image that I found from Google Images. And I've said I want 5 icons in this style, but I've also added some detail about the color I want as well. And I've asked for it in a single row on transparent background so that I can crop these out and use them wherever I want. And it's really useful. You can accurately do 10, 15, 20 of these in one batch. And it's so much more efficient than doing it one by one, and they're much more likely to be an accurate set and match each other. And so I'd highly recommend that approach. But Tom, you've touched on this already. You've got your final image. Is that it, or do you have to inspect it closely?
Very closely. I mean, I literally got the magnifying glass out, right? And I can't stress the importance of that. I would argue inspecting images for quality is almost harder than inspecting text outputs or document outputs from your AI for quality, because it really just take a designer's eye. So make sure that you spend some time with that. And again, you involve a professional if the stakes are high enough and worth doing so. Another big call out that we like to emphasize is quality drift. If you have very long conversations where you're iterating a lot, your original subject image might get distorted. Or if you supply an image that was generated using AI, and then continue to iterate on that, your subject again will slightly get warped over time and start to look a bit funny. So starting with a fresh reference image when you're creating a new imagery is definitely best practice.
So on that, how many times would you be comfortable kind of iterating on an image within a chat before kind of going back to an original?
Models are trying to make that window longer for us, but maybe half a dozen image generations before I personally would consider starting from scratch.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yep. And then lastly, you're using an AI model that is trained on publicly available information on the internet. That means it doesn't understand, maybe doesn't have the same ethical priorities as you and the same kind of moral compass. It's just doing what it's seen other people do. So we want to be mindful that the biases of humans are likely going to be embedded in images that you create. So you just want to apply kind of your own principles and your own judgment anytime you have the opportunity to do so.
Cool. I love it. I love seeing the AI generated images popping into the chat as well, Victoria. That looks fantastic. And yeah, Dan, I'm impressed with Copilot as well. That's fantastic. Cool. We are nearly at the end of the session. I've just dropped a quick poll. Would love your feedback about what you liked about this session and what else you would like for future sessions. And just to recap, there's the 4 main approaches that we covered today. We talked about describing your image in a lot of detail. And that's essential for most image generation, but especially useful if you're creating kind of stock photography or if you want hero images for your slides. We talked about combining multiple reference points into one, great for environmental mockups and YouTube thumbnails and things like that. I showed you sketching some content and uploading that as a reference point. Great for infographics, diagrams, and anytime you need to give more information. And we talked about matching a style using reference images as well and creating multiple sets. Super useful for icons, consistent sets, etc. But Tom, can you tell us about our next session?
Yeah, so we'll be back soon enough. And we'll be going deep on ChatGPT Work, which is a platform that we are very stoked on and using regularly ourselves over the last several weeks. Our first power-up session we ever did actually was on Claude Cowork, where we thought Claude Cowork was just a major transformation versus traditional Claude chat. That same transformation is happening for ChatGPT users, going from the old school chat experience to the new work experience, where you get to see agentic AI really put to work on your behalf for kind of common office tasks. So we will be taking you all through an orientation on ChatGPT Work and making sure that you can put that to use in your day-to-day.
Love it. Thank you so much. Cool. I've popped a sign up link in the chat if anyone would like to come along. We will see you there. But that's it for today. Thanks so much for joining us and for getting involved and the great questions and contributions. And we'll see you next time. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, everyone.